to hear from Tamara Adlin. Tamara's a strategy and user experience consultant. She's mentored and coached many people through big career opportunities and transitions. These days, she volunteers as an ambassador for Never Search Alone, which is what she's going to talk to us about tonight, which is a huge free network of resources for job seekers based on a book by a guy named Phyl Terry. She hosts bi-weekly LinkedIn live presentations to job seekers who are considering or are in the job search councils, and she will tell us a little bit more about what all that means right now. So Tamara, please take it away.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you. Thanks for finding time on this fine, sunny afternoon. Yep, I'm Tamara Adlin, and I am in a field related to your field. I've been in UX and strategy for a very long time, for about 25 years. I've known Ariel just about that long. I'm just outing Ariel age-wise. So what I'm going to tell you about tonight is this resource is available to you that's free, and it's going to sound like an infomercial, except that everything that I'm telling you is free. So infomercial as it is, it's still free, so it's a good thing. And it's a resource that is really helpful to a lot of people who are seeking jobs right now, and so many of us are. Who I am professionally is something different. I'm a consultant. I've got a new podcast called Corporate Underpants, which is about the visible panty lines of organizational communication problems that show up in your products. And for those of you giggling, you are my kind of people, so you should join me on Corporate Underpants. I do a live one every other week or so. Tomorrow, I'm interviewing David Bland, who wrote Testing Business Ideas. So join for that, and working on some courses on stakeholder alignment and alignment personas. But let's get on to Never Search Alone. So this book, Never Search Alone. So this book came out in 2022, and it was written by a human being that is lovely named Phyl Terry. I have known Phyl Terry since 2002 when I worked at Amazon. Phyl Terry, for money, has a company called Collaborative Gain. I just want to give you this context because otherwise none of this would really make sense. Phyl has a company called Collaborative Gain. Phyl makes money because companies spend a lot of money to send executive level people to be on their Collaborative Gain councils. So Phyl is not doing everything in their lives for free. And in those councils, that's all community driven. And it's basically the idea that not everything at work has to be a secret. Not every problem has to be handled by yourself. And so these councils are made up of non-competitive organizations. So for example, Williams-Sonoma might be on the same council as REI, but they wouldn't be on the same council as Sur La Table or something like that. But beyond that, like if a product manager is having trouble hiring, they can talk to another product manager who's trouble hiring, whatever that is. So that's been part of Phil's DNA all the way since the beginning. And even before that, when Phil's mother, named Chick, was a community organizer in California for teachers in the 60s. So this community-based stuff is really a big piece of Phyl. And I like to think of them as somebody who has the business brain of Warren Buffett and the soul of Princess Diana. So that's how all this stuff comes together. So I've known Phyl since I was on one of those councils, and then I couldn't be on it anymore when I became a consultant in 2005, but stayed in touch with Phyl, as some of you, I'm sure, have stayed in touch with people that are really special in your professional lives. And Phyl also does really high-end career coaching of the kind that none of us on this call are going to ever want or need, which is like the $250,000 a year for CEOs. So this is a person who knows their stuff and also has helped a lot of people with connections and getting jobs over the years. And finally, Phil's friends said, you've got to write this down. You've got to create a book to share what you know. And that's where Never Search Alone came from. And in the meantime, I had been doing a lot of mentoring and career coaching and stuff for people that I cared about. And so I was fascinated when this came out, read it immediately, and was on one of the very first job search councils in 2022, and I was the moderator of job search council number 23. And currently we are getting close to 4,000 job search councils. And I sort of moved up in the rank of volunteers to do what I do now. So I'm a big believer. So let me tell you what this is. The book came, this is basically what it is a huge free network private network for job seekers. And the analogy that will hit home the most clearly is it's like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous for job seekers. We are not affiliated with AA or NA, but it's free and it's a set of like basically 11-week program that you go through together in a job search council of between 4 and 6 other people who are also looking for work. And there's 2 categories of job search councils, which made more sense originally. In 2022, when this came out, nobody knew that Techmageddon was about to happen career-wise, right? So there is a concept of a slow job search council and a fast job search council. They're essentially the same program. It's just like some people are starting to do this before they leave the job and are thinking about their next one. Or you're out of work now and you're on a fast search council, which means that you're committing to meet probably around once a week. Most of our councils now are fast search councils for obvious reasons. And the commitment to this, it's a commitment not of money, but of time. The estimate of all the work that you're going to do through this peer mentoring process is about 80 hours worth of work. However, it should replace 80 hours of frantic work that's not getting you anywhere with the job seeking process. So you pay with your time and your commitment, not with money. Nobody's ever going to ask you for money as part of this program. And the way it works is that you sign up on phyl.org, and I can show you some of these resources as we go through this. Let me show you. I showed you the book already. This is my website, but this is phyl.org, phyl.org, and it's a pretty basic website. It has ways to join a JSC or Job Search Council or find out more about Job Search Councils. In the videos, it has a lot of videos, mostly with me, in these LinkedIn Lives where we interview people, mostly people who've been through the process or people who are experts in networking. Or this coming Friday, we have an interview with a recruiter to see behind the scenes what it's like for recruiters in this job market. And lots of opportunities to volunteer and all of that stuff. But to join a job search council, all you have to do is click join a JSC, and it is a commitment and then just a little application process. So let me stop sharing now and come back to you guys. When the book first launched, the idea was it would be out there and people would just put together their own job search councils. But what happened was so many people wanted help with that this enormous volunteer community sprouted up around the book to help match people to job search councils. And the way the job search councils are created is it's typically 4 to 6 people, and they're at about the same age or number of times around the block. So if you have been working in the professional world for about 10 years, we want to match you up with other people who have been in it for about 10 years. Even if you're switching careers and you're only 1 year into the switch, we still want to know that you've been working for about 10 years or whatever, because we don't want to put people who are super experienced with people just out of college, because then it won't be a peer mentoring experience. Then the next way we match is based on time zones, because we want it to be relatively easy to meet. Most of job search councils are happening over Zoom calls. And no, you're not necessarily all in exactly the same field. Our goal is not to create job search councils that are just content strategy people, because it's really important to get an external perspective on who you are and how you're seen in the working world and on the kinds of jobs you might want next. This is very much for you if you don't know what the hell you want to do next. And if you're seeking a job, you know, it's a rare case when somebody knows exactly what they want to do. It matches up exactly with what the marketing is hiring for, and the way you're expressing yourself and written your resume is exactly the way people want to see it. That's almost never true. So just like when people are combating alcohol addiction or narcotics addiction or whatever, a magical thing psychologically happens to us as humans when we get put together in a group of people who are sharing the similar challenge. And we start to talk to each other, we start to help each other. And even just by showing up and just being willing to share your story, like, oh my God, I've been searching for 8 months. It's never been this hard to search for a job before. I really feel like I'm never going to work again. Maybe I'll go be a barista or I'll fold sweaters at the Gap. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Everybody's feeling that way right now. There's many of us who could have sneezed and gotten 3 job offers 3 years ago and who are struggling intensely right now, and you feel like it's you and it's not you. Well, what do you do in that situation? Nobody ever taught us how to look for work. Nobody ever taught us really how to write a resume. Nobody ever taught us how to do LinkedIn. Nobody taught us how to network. It's as if I always felt like I must have missed that day in class where they taught you how to look for a job, but we all missed that day in class. So this operationalizes the job search process. In the 11 weeks, there's an agenda for every single meeting. And this book, the one thing you do have to do is get your hands on this book, which if you spend money, it's $10, or you can get it or request it from the library. There's audiobook versions of it. That's the only thing that even remotely costs money, but you have to get it because it's kind of like a textbook, but you can see, it's written really well also. So there are about 25 exercises that are part of this book, and they have been tested and honed over hundreds of revisions. So I'm going to give you essentially an overview of what it would be like if you decided to join a job search council, which is similar to what I do in the orientations, and just give you a sense of it so you can decide if it's right for you. So first you apply, and then there's three big ideas in order that sort of clump exercises into groups. The first big idea we call Job Search Council, which is the whole idea of getting together with a group of people. Like we said, we help you with that. And then you start to go through some deceptively simple introspection processes that you're probably going to feel like you've already done, but it doesn't matter. You do it again anyway, because who you are today is not the same person you were 2 years ago when you looked for work. And it's not even the same person you were 2 months ago if you started looking. Like, things change. And so the very first exercises include an exercise called Gratitude House, where you write letters that you're probably never even going to send. And you write letters to people who have helped you in your career. And it's an exercise in remembering that you are not alone and that there are people who have helped you in your career. And the next step you do is something called the Mnookin 2-pager. And this was named for Allison Mnookin, who's a friend of Phil's and also a Harvard Business School person. And the Mnookin 2-pager is where oh, by the way, one of you signs up to be the moderator of the group. You're just another job seeker, but you happen to be relatively good at leading meetings, or you want to get better at leading meetings. All of the meetings are already scheduled. Not scheduled. Scheduling is the hard part, is figuring out when everybody can meet. But all of the materials are already there. So I want to show you another resource here. Go back to Chrome. This is what we call the workbook. And this is a giant Notion doc put together by volunteers, and it has all of the exercises. It's free. You get it when you join. And it has the purpose, the process, it has ongoing work, and it has instructions, it has templates. So all of the operational stuff is already done. And all of it's in here, the Mnookin 2-pager, and then all the other free tools and tools on negotiation and all of that stuff. So, and when you join, the other thing that you get is you get added to the Slack channel, which is this ginormous free Slack channel. I don't expect you to be able to see clearly everything that's on here, but right now, for example, there's 13,868 people live on this Slack right now. So if you feel like your network is limited, it isn't anymore. And while it's true that all the people on here are looking for work, it's also true that they all know someone and carpool with somebody, or, took a class in making tapas with somebody. Who knows, right? So connections for jobs are really what get us new jobs. And so having all these new connections, and there's conversations in here that are specific to Seattle, to consulting, to design, to fractional work, to product people, career changers. Lots and lots of different channels that are going on here as well. So that is another part of what you get all for free. So the moderator sets up the first meeting, and the cadence of the meetings is typically 60 or 90 minutes once a week for about 11 weeks. Meeting 0 is where you meet each other and you set a charter for your job search council. You get a number, and then you do the Gratitude House exercise, where you sort of open up your memory to the people who have helped you in the past with your career. It could be teachers, it could be parents, it could be friends, whatever. And then you do the Mnookin 2-pager, which is where I got off track before. The Mnookin 2-pager is one of the deceptively simple things that you've probably done before in some way, shape, or form, but you need to do again. And the best way to do it is that you get partnered up with another member of your job search council, and you go through it together. One of you talks while the other one types. And when you're talking, you're answering 4 fundamental questions. One is, what have you loved about previous jobs? What have you hated about previous jobs? So that's really articulating everything from your past, what you've loved and hated. And the next two questions are about the future. What are must-haves and what are must-not-haves for future jobs? And you're sitting there talking, somebody else is taking notes while you're talking, and a really wacky thing happens, which is when you're done, the person who was typing reads them back to you, and you're like, that's so insightful. You just said it yourself, but hearing somebody else say it back to you is kind of amazing. And you present it to your job search counsel and they can give you feedback. And here's where you start to see some stuff that's hidden in plain sight. And we all have that. So for example, a classic example is there was a woman in a job search counsel who loved being part of startups, loved wearing many hats, loved the energy of it. When she looked at must-not-haves and must-not-haves for future jobs, her family situation had changed, and she needed to have a more reliable schedule. It wasn't until she said this out loud to her job search counsel that they were like, you cannot have both of those things. You cannot be part of a startup and have a reliable schedule. And as obvious as that feels for us to hear, she hadn't seen it. And you have stuff like that too, hidden in plain stuff, weird stuff that's changed slightly, even if you've been going through a job search like month to month, it can change. So you do that. And then you get started on what's called the listening tour. I and my job search counsel did everything we could to drag our feet about this. The listening tour is an organized way to go out and have those conversations you feel like you should have with your network. So there are three kinds of conversations you have as part of a listening tour. One is called the reverse exit interview. One is called the recruiter interview, and one is called the golden question interview. And what you do is you make a plan, a strategy for which people you want to talk to, people you worked with in the past, people in jobs who have inspired you, and recruiters. And we even have a big free recruiter network where you can have these conversations with them. You plan them, you schedule them, and then instead of just going and talking in a frantic way about what you hope will happen with your life, you have a very organized set of questions that are already written for you, right? And all the operational stuff is done. There's a note sheet that's already formatted. And the three kinds of interviews are, first of all, the reverse exit is where you talk to people you've worked with in the past. And you ask them questions about how they saw you at work, how you come across at work. What are the great things that you bring? And for many of us, some of the most powerful things we bring are things we undervalue because they come easily to us. It could just be your attitude in meetings. It could be the fact that you write things down. Whatever it is. And you may also get some negative feedback. There's another classic story of this woman, a developer who was part of the Never Search Alone. And she decided as a part of her reverse exit interview, she reached out to somebody she didn't get along with, who had been her manager, which I think is the ballsiest thing I've ever heard. And I wouldn't wouldn't recommend it. But she called this woman and she said, okay, well, here are my questions about how I was seen in the workplace. And the woman she called, her ex-manager said, okay, well, here's the deal. Here's why we didn't get along. We didn't get along because you were trying to constantly take over the meetings. And no, it wasn't me, even though Ariel would probably say it was me because that's what I do. She said, you were always trying to take over meetings, but I was the manager. So what I would say about you is that you need to step up to a managerial role, even though you've been dragging your feet, because you can't stand to have somebody else run the meetings. And now they're best friends, which I think the movie rights should be sold, right? So that's a sort of extreme example, but you get this perspective on yourself and you bring it back to your job search counsel and you talk about it. The second kind of interview is where you reach out to a recruiter. And Phyl says that you should always take calls from recruiters no matter when they come, because you never know when it's going to be helpful to no one. The world of a recruiter is very different than the world of us, and they're under a lot of pressure too. The goal of talking to the recruiter is not to ask them to try to get you a job. It's to say to them, here's the summary of my Manukin two-pager, which you've summarized in a presentable way. And here's all my stuff. Here's my resume, here's my LinkedIn profile. And you're asking them, given what you're seeing here, without revisions, where do I fit in the market today? And by the way, you have not yet tried to revise your resume or your LinkedIn, which is I think of those tasks as hot needle in the eye tasks, like I'd rather do anything else. And you absolutely should not do them as the first thing that you do in your career search, because you're in no position to revise them when you're frantic and you don't know what you're going to do next. So you haven't even done that yet. You're just showing them your old stuff. And the recruiter is going to tell you Given what I'm seeing here with no changes, whatever, here's where you fit in the market today. Here's where I could recommend you in. And this is really important, especially today because of Techmageddon. People who were VPs are now directors. People who were directors are now senior individual contributors. And salaries have also gone down. That's a supply and demand thing, it's not about you. And the only thing worse than hearing from a recruiter that I cannot put you out there for a VP job, even though that's what you had before, is not knowing that, going out and trying to get that VP job and getting squished like a bug under, and emotionally react to it every single time. This is a market reality exercise, right? And so once you know where you do fit in, and this is where you start to explore things like if you want to change verticals or you want to change specialties or what have you. This is what starts to help you think through that. The last set of interviews is, well, not necessarily chronological last, but the third kind of interview is the golden question interview. And I've stolen this and used this almost every time I talk to anybody. And the golden question is, what would you do if you were in my position? So when I joined the Job Search Council as Job Search Council moderator number 23, and now we're up near 4,000, I did it because I wanted to help Phyl launch Never Search Alone because I love Phyl. At that time, I was trying to decide whether I wanted to stay a consultant or go in-house because I was hearing about these mystery roles at Google that made $1.5 million a year. And I was like, well, maybe I should go get one of those, even though they actually, it turns out they don't exist. And so I was trying to decide. And so I started taking the process of Never Search Alone really seriously. And the questions I was asking was like, what would you do in my situation? Like right now, I'm not working a lot with startups, even though I've done it my whole career. I don't really love it so much anymore, but I don't have contacts in bigger companies. What would you do in my situation? Interestingly, people love being asked for help. If you ask them in an organized way, it's a compliment to be asked for help, right? It's a compliment when you're asked for help. What people have trouble with is if you're scrabbling at them to try to get a handhold to keep yourself from drowning. And that's sometimes what we do when we're desperate for work. We're like, help, 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 help. And that doesn't feel good to be approached that way. But being approached with, I'd really like some of your brain sizzle on this challenge of mine. And then, is there anybody else I should talk to? So you gather all this information with all the notes and everything. And because you guys are who you are, and I say this to product people too, by this time you will feel like you want to redo all of the materials. You will want to redo the Notion. You will want to redo our website. You will want to put this on a platform. And I call that stray voltage. I did that. That's how the notebooks, the workbook started. The stray voltage comes when you have not been working for a while or have been in a job you hate, or especially if you've not been working and haven't had a team or a project. Never Search Alone gives you a team and a project. And when you have a team and a project again, then the batteries that were totally drained start to recharge a little bit because you don't even realize how much you've missed the energy inspiring parts of working together with other people in a good and positive way. So this is when stray voltage happens. And then we say, halt, focus on yourself, trust the process. All right, so that's the first big idea. The second big idea is super duper uber genius and really, really hard. It's called candidate market fit. So because you are who you are and you're all content people, you know what product market fit is. I'm going to assume that. If you have questions about that later, you can ask. But it's the basic idea that before you build something or try to sell it, you better know that there's people out there who want it, and you better know the words that they're using to find it, so that you would not call this a thermally appropriate liquid containment vehicle. You'd call it an insulated water bottle, right? So you use the right words and you figure out what's out there and you figure out that people really want it. Well, the same is true for you when you are looking for work. Essentially, you are a product that is on the market. And it's a really good question of whether there's candidate market fit. The roles that existed before, the definitions of those roles may not exist now. AI has changed the way everybody's thinking about content. So how are they thinking about it today? What does it mean to have a content job today? The thing that this also really tackles is that whenever we are looking for work, what we tend to do is throw a net. And you see this all over LinkedIn. Oh, I too am now unemployed and looking for work, and I'll take anything in content strategy. Writing that feels correct because we will take anything in content strategy or content development. The problem with that, now picture yourself as a user of that post. Somebody else posted it and you're looking at it, and what you do is you go, oh, and anybody would be lucky to have you. Let me know what I can do to help. It doesn't immediately make you think of people to introduce that person to. Broad statements are hard to narrow in on. So, interestingly, instead of throwing a broad statement like I'll take anything in content, you want to throw a spear, an extremely narrow statement called a candidate market fit statement. And you come to the candidate market fit statement through a bunch of exercises. And it's going to sound more like I'm looking for a senior individual contributor role in an established, I don't even know what to use for you guys. I'm going to use mine. A senior individual contributor role as in product management in an established product management organization in a 5,000 plus person growth startup in transportation. I mean, like super narrow. The role, the level, the type of company, the vertical, the size of company. It could be, you could even say mission driven. You could say it has to be in Houston. Whatever you want to say, and there's many more exercises to help you come up with some drafts of these and to test them out. What that gives you is a solid statement that's memorable. And when you express that statement, people hear it and they're able to expand from that. So if I said, I'm looking for a senior individual contributor product manager role in an established product management organization, a 5,000 plus person startup in healthcare, I may not know anybody in that, but I might say, oh my God, I know somebody who's in transportation looking for something like that. Maybe I should introduce you. Or I know somebody in a much smaller company in healthcare that wants to scale up their product management org. Maybe I should introduce you to them, right? So this super narrow, clean, crystallized statement about what you're looking for and where you fit in the market today is what you're now able to do. And it also gives you something to use instead of what I like to call the blurt. And the blurt is when we go to any networking occasion and we try to fit our entire resume into 2 minutes and tell people everything we've done that's been of value. Well, it's hard to do. It's by the way, if we all admit it, it's horrible to listen to those. I mean, anybody younger than you that you've listened to try to blurt out their entire experience and all their school it's horrible. What you want to do instead is have something crystallized, like I am looking for a senior product management role in a, you probably remember what I said. And that enables you to do what the real purpose of networking is, to get a second meeting, right? With that people to talk to. Okay, so that is what now, and only now are you ready for the hustle. Now you are ready to revise your LinkedIn and your resume with the help of your job search counsel. Now you know, with that crystallized candidate market fit statement, you can go out and look at other people who are very similar, and you can see how you compete with them. You can research companies that are in that area. The point here, and there's a lot of strong points that we're going to make on if you're curious about a recruiter talking about resumes on Friday, there's another free talk and it's at 9 a.m. Pacific. General resumes don't work. If your resume could be interchanged with anybody else's with a different name at the top, you're kind of screwed. What you want instead is to differentiate yourself as a product, to be crystal clear on what you're bringing. Because if you say you can do anything and you build a resume that's appropriate to everything, you're not going to stand out, because some people are going to be hitting the nail on the head. So I know this is hard to get your head around. It's scary, but the book is all about getting to a process to try this. Then the hustle starts, because you have a resume, you have your LinkedIn ready, and you go out there. And if it doesn't work, then you revisit your candidate market fit statement. But that brings us to the third big idea. And what I want to tell you here is don't leave before you get to this part of the process. We like to call the third part of this playing to win-win. And this is about interviewing and negotiating in a new way. on average, people are getting to an offer faster if they have gone through the Never Search Alone process than the national average. No one's saying you're going to get a job offer within 11 weeks. Nobody can guarantee that. But by the time you get up to here, you'll have a much clearer idea of who you are, what you want, and how to go for it. Then when you get interviews, you want to interview in a new way. And this is flippin' genius. When you interview, instead of taking the job description as it is, what you want to do is start working on a different document called Job Mission and OKRs. And OKR, as most of you know, stands for Objective and Key Results. The way I like to think about this is the second I see the job description and start doing my research on the company or whatever, it's almost like you're creating your own performance review document for 6 months after you take the job. If they hire the right person, what numbers will have changed by how much in 6 months or a year? Right? So if they say they're looking for a leader in a product management organization, that probably doesn't mean that part of the OKRs is generating 10 wireframes a day, right? Like it does mean some other stuff. And this is where your expertise starts to come into play too, because I like to think of job descriptions as big dumb bullies that should be taken down and torn apart for parts. There's a Harvard study from a while ago that said if a woman looks at a job description that has 20 bullets and does not qualify for one, she will not apply. If a man looks at a job description with 20 bullets and does qualify, but only for one bullet, he will apply. Oh my God. Anyway, we have these reactions to job descriptions as if they're holy documents from God or something. Meanwhile, if any of you have ever been involved in creating a job description, you know that it typically goes like, hey, Tamara, you have to put together, throw together a JD for that head on Tanya's group. And I go, and then I start scrabbling around and pasting together whatever. And, you know, but we read them as if they were like super, super smart. When you create the job mission and OKRs, it helps to organize the questions you ask during the interview. The questions you ask of the recruiter, because that's your first hurdle, and then the questions you ask from the hiring manager. And it enables you to take the answers to that back also to your job search counsel. So one of several things can happen. You know, in one case, it could be exactly the right job for you. If it is, then you share a version of the job mission and OKR document with the hiring manager at the right time, which is all talked about in the book. What this does is knocks their socks off, because the main job of a hiring manager is to distinguish between talkers and doers. And by creating this proactive document of really defining what value you'll be able to bring to the role and how that layers up to their goals, you're already showing that you're a doer and not just a talker. And you'll see the reaction of the hiring manager. If they bristle at in the slightest change to the job description, it might not be the right boss for you, right? Or it might be the wrong job, but this is where I compare it to online dating and talking to your friends about somebody you just met. You may have just broken up with whoever, and then you meet someone and you take them to your friends and you're like, oh, look at this. This is this. And they look at you and they're like, this is the same person you dated last time. They just have red hair. And you're like, no, this one I can change. This one is going to be better. You guys don't understand. We do that with jobs all the time. Now, money is what money is. But now we have a chance of catching that before we do that. Oh, this one, they told me that I'll get a promotion in 6 months. Oh, they told me they're going to hire somebody else to do the writing. Okay, whatever, but you're going to get a reality check on that. And so that can really help as well, just to help you say no to opportunities that are not right for you, because you need it to be successful. You need to be happy in your job. And the last piece of it, and I'm going to stop talking and invite you to, we're going to just talk about it. And you'll see if some of you are willing to just express how you're feeling right now looking for work, you'll see you're not alone. Last step is negotiating. Negotiating right now is not the same as it was several years ago. There isn't a lot of room to negotiate on title. There isn't a lot of room to negotiate on salary, but you should negotiate. And what you negotiate for is the stuff that you need to be happy in the job. So that could be resources, that could be training, that could be access to information, that could be mentorship, that could be, I need at least $500 for sticky notes every 2 weeks. That could be, you guys use Miro and I want to use Mural. Whatever it is that's going to make you, or in a startup, you may be coming on to build a team. I would say ask to see the plans for fundraising and how much of a budget is going to go to your team should they raise that much money over the next year, and what is the org structure going to look like. These are questions you're allowed to ask as part of the negotiation process, things that give you a better sense that you're going to be happy in the job, because those things lead to money and to promotions. Okay, let me just repeat that this is a completely free network. Nothing costs money. This is not me telling you some fancy thing where get started now and for just $200 more. That doesn't happen. The book costs $10 or whatever, or get it from the library. What that means, there's everybody who runs this program, there's a huge Salesforce administrator who's trying to, like, the person who matches all these job search councils works for a living doing something else. We've got people running the workbook. We've got people running moderator orientations, weekly moderator calls to help with any issues in the group. We've got people monitoring the Slack to make sure that any assholes get weeded out. Definitely, there are some job search councils that are less successful than others, because it's this huge public network. But we do have a lot of volunteers there. If you do have a problem, or if it fizzles out or whatever, you get in touch with us and we step in to try to help. Probably 50,000 hours of volunteer time have gone into this. And there's more opportunities for volunteers all the while. This sounds too good to be true, but it isn't. I would not be putting my professional reputation behind this or spending this time talking about it if it wasn't. So I just get really excited about telling folks about it, because I think it's really cool. And I think it's especially cool for people like us who are in customer facing roles where we have to understand communication, and it's so cool to have something that just makes sense like this, because if product work makes sense to you, this is UXing yourself. This is figuring out how you come across to your customers and your users and honing that through a preset process. It's a cult. It's totally a cult. It's a cult, except it doesn't cost anything and it's not religious and not political.
Oh my God. I love it.
And so let me know if raise your hand if you have a question, or if you're willing to just say, like, if you're looking for work right now and you've been feeling really disheartened or feeling like you're the only one going through something. On our orientations, which are very much like what I just did today, we spend the second half answering questions, and even just hearing other people describe how they're feeling about the job hunt is helpful. So I'm open to any of it.
Awesome. And I made it possible for people to unmute. So if you want to ask your question directly, we do have one question in the chat. Ariel, do you want to?
Yeah. Sorry. Tony, do you have that up?
Yeah, actually, we had a question from Sean. And Sean, if you would like to ask it live, we can go ahead and unmute you. The question is about job descriptions, and we can maybe use that as a launching point.
Yeah.
Sean, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, no, my question was just about, first of all, nice to meet you, Tamara, and everybody on the call. My question was around job descriptions. I was glad that you mentioned that, because I usually get hung up on when job descriptions break out things by like essential or required skills versus preferred. And if there's something in a essential category, I will pretty much always write that off, like if I don't have that experience. Whereas if it's preferred, obviously there feels like there's room for flexibility there, or opportunity. They consider me. So I'm just curious if is that a mistake in your opinion? Do you think anything really is on the table if I feel reasonably confident otherwise it's still worth trying for?
I don't know. Because I'm not a recruiter. It's true. We really are having a free, like, ask a recruiter anything on Friday at 9. Okay. And the link on that is at phyl.org to ask. One thing I can tell you that the recruiter we're talking to has been really clear with me on is that speed is of the essence, and noodling over those things and taking a couple of days to hone your resume or trying to score it with AI, all of that stuff is pointless because they are so inundated with resumes that it does matter when you get yours in. So having a resume that's tuned to really reflect your candidate market fit statement and having that be super narrow and crystallized, which is fucking terrifying, is the right thing to do, and just send it. If you don't have another connection in. He's not a believer in tweaking and tuning and worrying about the AI tools opinions, because just with this respect to the AI tools, for example, which is kind of related to this, like a preferred versus required, everybody uses the AI tools, and recruiter systems are all like, they can tune up, they can tweak them any way they want. So there is no one answer to, did you get this right, for the AI or ATS tools. So I think the answer there is you do want to be as clear as possible about what you bring. But if you think it's a potentially good fit and your resume and your history make a good argument for that, then apply for it.
Thank you.
But I am not the be all end all on that. I'm just going to raise this up
Sure.
because I'm getting this weird sun mustache. There we go. And let's see, Jennifer.
Hi. Hi. I'm sorry. Or I can go ahead and ask because it was kind of related to that last question, because mine's not related. That's fine. Because he's
No, go
asking.
ahead.
Okay. Right. Anyway, I've been trying to get into content strategy for like the past 5 years. I've worked in content for over a decade, and my decision was to go back to school and get my master's. And so I'm graduating this year. But for all that time, I've been freelancing and just doing entrepreneurship work type stuff. And so now I'm trying to make the decision whether I go into the working world or just jump back in and continue the entrepreneurship stuff. And I'm on a contract right now that's probably I set it up for the contract to end when I graduate. So my question is this program applicable for, like, doing contract work, but on
1,000 times yes,
or-
it's perfect for
Okay.
you. The fact that you don't have the answer to that is a big fat yes.
Okay.
That's what this process is for. It's not because you already know what you want to do. It's, I have no idea who I want to be when I grow up, even though I'm 55.
Right.
Or, I just went back to school, or should I go back to school? Or I'm thinking of switching from content strategy to UX, or, do I need a 2-step strategy? This will help you think through
I'm
that
gonna
in an
sign you off
organized
pretty
way.
soon of getting into questions. Why?
There's somebody who's not muted on their iPhone. Okay. Does that answer your question, Jennifer? It's just a big fat yes. And if I were you, I would tell you, if you can extend that contract a little bit and keep it going for a little while after school, it might not be the worst idea in the world.
Oh, I'm waiting. I should find out in the next 2 weeks whether or not it's getting extended. It's, not up to me, it's up to the
Right.
company's budget, but
But still, like this, even if you did, even if you didn't, like this is a meeting generally once a week for about 90 minutes and then and some work, but it's all work on behalf of yourself. It's work you'd be doing anything to clarify these things. And it's exactly perfect for someone like you who's figuring out your next step in your strategy.
But does it provide some guidance on, like, consulting or doing it on the entrepreneurship side?
Well, it's not specifically designed for that, but there are so many people who have the same question. So
Okay.
there are channels that are specifically for entrepreneurship, for consulting, for fractional work, where there's hundreds of people talking about that and sharing resources for that, because there's so many people trying to figure out. And with the job market today, so many more people are like open to lots of options. So those conversations are going on all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a question from RR. What about cover letters? I don't know. I don't know enough about that. That's a recruiter question. And then I think there's probably some stuff about that in the book as well. Rebecca.
Hi. Nice to see some familiar faces. Thank you for doing this. This was really great, full of compassion. Forgive my big dog. This is like a new look I'm going for, whatever. So first of all, I want to share gratitude. Like, it is a very odd job market. And also a comment, which is, if you're like me, I was laid off. I'm one of thousands of people laid off who have like lots of skills, lots of like name brands on my resume, but it's not a normal time, right? And like in general, and also in this particular field, I want to share that I think like I'm noticing a lot of companies are not just like needing referrals and have like just hundreds of resumes within the first couple hours, it feels like. And the referrals help kind of get you to a screener. A lot of companies want to know that you value their why. And so I think like not just knowing like what your specific candidate market fit is, but it feels like, and I'd like your thoughts on this, like a lot of companies are really mission driven or are attempting to be mission driven in a very troubled time. And so I wonder if you have thoughts on that. Now that makes, in a way, it kind of like reduces the companies that might be of interest to you. But at the same time, I'm finding that it fosters a deeper connection for you as a potential candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I think the when you do the job mission and OKR, where you're really sort of redefining the job for yourself, part of the job mission part is a good place to, you know, as you do your research, to figure out if it's a match between the company and you, and to figure out how much they care about that. So to me, the job mission and OKR process also helps organize your research before you talk to anyone. So first you've decided how important that is for yourself, and then you figure out how important it is to the company, and then you're able to draw a much straighter line between the two. I don't know if all companies are like that. I think all companies want to look like that, right? Well, half the whatever. I'm not going to go there. So I mean, many do and many don't. But you want to stand out. So if that's the way that you can stand out with a match in your values or whatever you want to call it, or your mission, that can work well. And for some people, it's fully in their candidate market fit statement. There are people who say that they are looking for, you know, an operational role at a mission-driven company focused on equitable healthcare. And that too is memorable and specific. And that sets you apart from everybody who's in operations who just applies for everything. So one of the great quotes is that you're not a square peg looking for a round hole. You're an oddly shaped peg looking for an oddly shaped hole.
To that point, Tamara, I wonder, you know, I wonder if people, you know, would be concerned about defining themselves too narrowly, you know, like, you know, that's why it's sort of like, well, I'll do anything in content strategy, right? But, you know, out of the concern that, you know, they'll miss that one moment, and particularly in LinkedIn where it's scrolling past, you know, pretty quickly, you know, whether that kind of is putting them into too much of a niche or something. I'm curious kind of what you think about
So
that.
it gets really interesting when you think about this more, because that's logical, but now flip it around and imagine the recruiter getting 400 resumes in a day. How are they going to flip through those? They're going to flip through those 5 seconds at a time and put them in a maybe and no pile. And the ones that are going to stand out are the ones that have specific things in them that make that person stand out. So when I think about, that's the way I change my brain about the broad versus narrow thing. I think about how many resumes or how many job little post things in my resume could look exactly the same as someone else's. And the truth is right now, the only way to really get the attention, and it may be that you have 3 different resumes or not, right? But then there's all this debate about that on the Slack channel. Nobody's going to come and smack you, you know, on the butt if you have 3 resumes instead of 1, or you're trying 3 candidate market fit statements. But you're very, very organized and targeted about it, because you have to be able to stand out. They're looking for the right person, and they're seeing hundreds of 85% their resumes. So that's the way I get my head around it, that the risk of being broad is much higher in real life than the risk of being narrow.
Yeah. Other questions for Tamara or comments anyone wants to make?
I'm inspired.
I was going to say thank you for the same
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
It really is good. It's sort of this like, why didn't anybody think of this before?
Yeah.
Of this like AA for job seekers and this tried and tested steps and these exercises that are all, so you can really just finally stop. And people like us too, who try to make things clear and and organized. Somebody has finally just made this organized so that you can stop it with that brain of yours and just be a passenger and just focus on thinking through these steps instead of being in charge of organizing everything.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know there's a lot of you out there that are the ones thinking, oh, well, I'll just, I'm supposed to know how to do this, or I'm the one to make this clearer and easier. No, Phyl did a really good job on this. Took 10 years and 400 revisions of this. And I was like, oh my God, nobody ever taught me how to get a job. At least this is a way to get the job, even if you just read the book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that it's sourced from community, right? That's the world we live in. The people around us are able to reflect back to us. So the addition of a council, I think, is a really key concept.
Yeah, the other thing that we talk about is how it takes the weight off your spouse or your partner. Because no matter what, your spouse is going to say the wrong thing every time.
Yeah.
Because they're hardwired to be idiots like that. Right? But if you have a lovable, but they just can't help with job searchers. But there's even a Friday live I did with two people in the same household, a husband and wife on separate job search councils.
Oh,
And
wow.
there's something to that, having a team and a project.
Yeah.
And many job search councils meet far longer than the 11 weeks because they become friends. Many of them still meet for years afterwards. Or if you get a job early, you can either, leave and they can find a new one, or you can stay on. But it's a really kind of great collegial atmosphere. If anybody starts to try to sell you something, if anybody is badgering you, if anybody is sexist or racist or homophobic or anything, you tell
Yeah.
us and we hop on them fast and they're gone.
Right on. Excellent.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Well,
guys.
Yeah.
You're not alone
This is-
out there. The job stuff is flipping hard right now. So
It's
it's
Yeah.
really crazy.
It
it
is.
won't
Yeah.
this will not waste your time. At the very worst, you'll come out more organized in exactly what you want to do
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I've got the book sitting right there. I just got to pick it up.
Okay, and
All
then
right. Well,
if you like this, come listen to my Corporate Underpants podcast about all the problems in organizations that lead to bad products. That's what I'm trying to get out there right now. And that's free too.
Okay.
lots of goodness from Tamara. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Obviously this is a fraught topic for a lot of people right now. So I think just having the chance to talk about it and get a little inspiration hopefully is helpful to people. We've been, kind of dropping some of these links in the chat. Again, please feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to, of course, check out all of the great resources that Tamara has mentioned, and keep an eye on all of our channels to hear about our upcoming events. As I've mentioned at the top, we do these meetups every month, so we'll be announcing fairly soon our events for, I guess we're already in May, May and June and beyond. So keep an eye on our website, on the Slack channel, on LinkedIn, and Blue Sky, and everywhere else you might come across us. So we appreciate your time, your attention, and hope to see you again soon at one of our events. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.